Okay, good afternoon, everybody. You're very welcome. My name is Michael MacDonnell. I'm the Program Director for the MSc in Business Analytics in the Smurfit School. I'd like to welcome my colleagues here today also. So I'm going to begin with a very brief overview of the program and leave plenty of time then for questions. So you probably all have your own interpretation of what business analytics means. Mathematical techniques and information technology. So a mixture of mathematics, computer science, and business, really. And I guess something I'd like to emphasize is that we are in the business school, so it is very much designed to have very practical implementation of mathematical and technology methods to business problems. That's important, so it's not pure science. It's probably fair to say that this would be among the most technical degrees offered in a business school. So good just to be clear that we expect people coming into the program to have a strong interest and ability in mathematics, statistics, programming. Now, all of these things will be taught to you. We will build up your skills, but you should at least know that you're good at these things before you take on the program. So if you're not up for fairly technical content, and if you think that programming is a problem, then if you have an aptitude for it, not so much experience, that's fine. But if it's something that you don't like, then I would say to you up front, just be aware that this is a numerate program and quite scientific in that sense. Okay, so just to run through the main themes within the program very briefly, then we talk about big data. There's a lot of data around the place all the time. So data plus intelligence and modeling and questioning data. So making good business decisions using large scale data and using good analytical techniques is what we're about. So I think business decisions are really the important outcome at the end of all of it. That drives really everything that we do. And as I said, underlying concepts. So mathematical techniques, statistics is an important area, and computing. And more broadly then, again, just bringing it back to the idea that it is a business degree in the end, we like to emphasize communication, interpersonal skills, which are not always a natural fit maybe with people of a more scientific nature, but that's very important. So being brilliant at something and not being able to involve other people is no good. For that reason, we emphasize group work quite a lot. So we can talk about the way that we teach and the way that we interact and the way that we assess our teaching as well. But working with other people is something that we emphasize greatly. And that's always an interesting experience. And maybe Vamsi, who's a current student and a class ambassador, might touch on that. So sometimes at the beginning, people are a little bit maybe intimidated by the idea of having to work in groups, and there may be teething troubles, but actually towards the end of the program, people say one of the things that they learn the most from is working with other people. And again, that's really, really important going into the workplace to be able to work well with other people. No matter how brilliant you are, getting other people involved in your work is really essential. And that's something that obviously lasts forever then in your subsequent career. And then we'll look at research. So there's a lot of research going on in this area. There are a lot of new areas of technology, new applications of technology unfolding all the time. So we hear about blockchain as an example. So that's quite a current topic. So what is it and what can we do with it? And what do businesses need to know? But generally, I would say in terms of research, all of the things that we do in the program have huge application and huge demand in industry. So there was really, what we hear from employers is we just need more and more people with A, the core skills, so mathematics, statistics, computer science, and so on, but B, the ability to actually bring these into the workplace to help with decision making and problem solving. So I've already mentioned this overlap, or this, if you like, Venn diagram that shows the intersection between technology and business, and is important. One without the other is not much use. So we emphasize that throughout the program. Typically, the kinds of people that we see joining the program and completing it very successfully tend to have a primary degree with some fairly strong quantitative content. So whether that's a finance or information systems major within business, or all disciplines within engineering, and quite a lot of science as well. So mathematics graduates, but also broadly, so physics and other disciplines within science. I've mentioned the quantitative skill set a couple of times already. So this is something where we will help you to improve, but I would say in terms of considering the program, think about your own aptitude and interest and that you want to get deeper into quantitative disciplines. So it's important to be keen to develop your quantitative skills further. People ask me when they're thinking about applying for the program, if they don't have a degree that looks fairly closely related to the discipline, they ask me, what are the things that I can do best to prepare for the program? And I would say if you were going to do some preparatory study by yourself, I would say two things. Programming and statistics are probably the two most useful areas that you can brush on. Even if you've worked on those areas before, a little bit of self-study in programming and statistics will usually be the ones that pay off best as the program progresses. So where do the graduates go? That's really important. I guess a general comment, first of all, is that business analytics skills are needed in every organization with, I can't think of any exceptions. Large companies, small companies, finance, manufacturing, services. The technology industry itself obviously has become very, very important. And in Ireland, we're very closely networked with really the prime technology companies as well as a wide range of other multinationals. So a lot of our graduates, the majority of our graduates, I think, tend to go into multinational corporations, often with an Irish base. Doesn't have to be, obviously, with an Irish base. A lot of them will progress from the Ireland base of a multinational company into working with that company in other parts of the world, which is very exciting. But also general business. So as I said, finance. Also, we see things like utilities and telecoms, which obviously has a big overlap with the technology industry. Even things like insurance, where there's a very strong need for quantitative skills and also technology. Just to talk briefly about the program, and you can read more details on our website. It's a year-long program. First of all, that's important to emphasize. So we run from September to the end of August in the following year. We have 3 terms, which we call trimesters. You take 4 modules in each term, and so the curriculum is fairly clear. I think it's fairly well defined. There's variety in the summer in that you can pursue a piece of independent research, which we call a capstone, and they will be typically projects that are linked with companies that we work closely with, and sometimes they're more research-focused projects, which would be working with faculty members. I think it's true to say that all of the modules involve individual and group work. So as I mentioned earlier, the idea of group activity is something that we emphasize and build on throughout the program. So there's a range of activities and assessments in each of the modules. Depending where you're coming from, that may be, particularly the group element of it, and continuous assessment may feature more strongly than a lot of traditional degree programs. Something that I like to talk about, Vamsi, I'm sorry you've seen this a couple of times before, but I just think it's an interesting thing to reflect on. When we talk about what kind of person we are, we maybe categorize ourselves as being highly technical, quantitative, whatever it may be, and we think of ourselves as being one thing. And just as a sort of a shorthand, I like to think about this spectrum ranging from hard to soft skills. So at the very hard end, we can think about optimization, so mathematical modeling, where we can do a scheduling problem, for example. So a well-known scheduling problem would be rostering staff in a hospital or crew on an airline, for instance. So that could be, something that's really clearly mathematically defined, and we might think of ourselves as being really well suited to that. The very other end of the scale then tends to be customer facing. And what I would say about that is a lot of technical people aren't really crazy about selling and building customer relations and so on, but it's really important. And actually, I think everybody should cover as much of this spectrum as possible and not just be a specialist in one area or another. And just one other thing to reflect on. So we don't necessarily try to cover all of these different keywords in depth during the program, but it's good to recognize that if you go into an organization and you're very technically focused, you should try to push a little bit in what we can call the soft direction. So again, learning to interact with people, understanding their business environment and business problems is really important. Um, and just another observation is that through the progression of careers, people starting at the hard end of this scale tend to move towards the soft end of the scale. So if I think about a consulting firm, for example, if you happen to stay with a consulting firm for a long time, so 15 or 20 years, you will naturally find yourself in a role as you get more senior that you're dealing more and more with customers and you're selling, because obviously selling is really important. So that's just a reflection. And what I wish for graduates coming out of the program is not that they will say, I'm a purely technical person, but actually, yes, I'm good on the technical areas, but also I recognize that building business relations is important and generating business is important. And if we were to become, I mentioned blockchain as an example, if we were to become a blockchain specialist, most people have no idea what that is. So there's a huge selling job to be done in communicating the potential of a new technology to somebody who runs a bank, for example, who doesn't consider themselves to be particularly technical. Okay, so that's my very, very brief overview and some really important people that you need to know about. So Anne-Marie and I are both here in the call, and we have a very well-organized admissions process as well. So my colleague Richard is here from admissions as well, and they can deal with any queries before you join the program. So I hope that's helpful, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have now. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have a couple of questions, Michael. So one is, I have experience in human resource with no programming knowledge. Am I eligible for this course?
Yes, and actually human resources is an area that is making great use of business analytics at the moment. And we've seen a huge shift, for instance, to LinkedIn. I don't work for LinkedIn, or I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but we see, a huge shift in recruitment activity has gone from, paper-based CVs going through recruitment agencies to things on LinkedIn, where there's very smart algorithms being used now to target people for jobs, and that's driven by analytics. So yeah, I mean, so yes, I mean, human resources is a growing area, a very, very important area, obviously a huge area of activity for a lot of companies, and particularly knowledge-based companies. They're always trying to find the right people. So the other part of the question, no programming knowledge, I would just say that take a course by yourself in Python or some well-known programming language. There are fantastic resources out there, but I would give yourself a week or two to learn some programming by yourself. It will just make things a little bit easier once the program commences.
Yeah, and also the same person is also asking, not having prior experience in programming, is it going to impact while getting jobs?
No, because you will have experience by the end of the program. So we will bring everybody up to quite a good standard in program. So I just say, to make the challenge a little bit easier, just spend a little bit of time trying to understand the basics of programming before joining the MSc.
And another question there, can everyone participate in the capstone?
Yes.
And what is the criteria to select the capstone module? Is there any eligibility requirements for that?
No, the challenge that we have really is to try to match people to relevant capstones. So some will be focused on quite a specific area. So machine learning would be very popular, for example. So we carry out a matching exercise early in the second term to try and make sure that everybody gets a capstone that fits their skills profile and also their career interest.
And another question here, is this program suited for people who are mainly interested in applying statistics and data analytics in the field of marketing research?
Absolutely, and going back to the spectrum that I mentioned, people involved in marketing will often not be especially technical, or very often people in marketing are not particularly mathematical or focused on programming, for example. So it's a really rich area of application for analytics. If we think about the dreaded YouTube algorithm or the Google search algorithm, those things are purely they're purely running on analytics. So they're looking at your search behavior and your online behavior, which again there's been a huge shift in marketing to algorithmic based searching and promotion.
And just another question here, does business analytics course have 2 intakes, September and January, or is it just one? So it's just the one, we just have an intake in September.
Yeah, probably just worth mentioning there is a part-time option, which is really taking the very same program as the full-time people at half speed.
Yeah. I'm an engineering graduate with 2 years of experience as a business analyst. How suited is my profile to this program?
That would be really typical of current students in the program, so probably a very good fit.
Okay. So next question, which languages and tools should one learn in advance to join this course?
Vamsi, would you like to, because I'm doing all the talking, so.
No worries, Michael, that's completely fine. I think, as Michael said, like we'll be getting to a good stage with all the programming tools and languages in the course itself. But if you really want to get a good start to it, maybe you can start off with Python. So that is really important. And you'll have a very, very detailed course about Python, like Introduction to Python. That's what the name is. And then we can start about Tableau. So Tableau is really interesting visualization tool that we'll be covering in the second trimester. And for similar like Python, we have R, which we do in the third trimester. So every trimester you focus on one tool in particular so that you develop your programming skills and your visualization skills as well. But apart from all that, I would actually say like get used to Microsoft Office suite in total, because that's really important. You have to build a lot of presentations. So it's not about just programming and technology. It's also about how we are going to present to corporations in a client meeting or anything of that sort. So you need to get used to it. And I would say Excel is one of the most important tool that I've dealt with. So get in touch with Excel and just get up to speed with that. So I think this will be a good start for you. And like it will be really interesting to see how it would go further.
Thanks, Vamsi. Yeah, that's interesting because Excel is something that people will continue using in the workplace right through their career. It's not. We think of it maybe as a somewhat basic thing, but not really. It's really the first thing that people go to do any kind of modeling.
Correct.
There's a book that you can download online called Learn Python the Hard Way, which I've recommended, and a number of people have found that to be very beneficial.
It's amazing. Learn Python the Hard Way. We use that textbook. It's really good.
I think the title is tongue in cheek. I hope it is.
Yes.
So next question for you, Richard. When does the applications for September 2022 intake start?
Sure. Always the 1st of October. So 1st of October every year for the following intake. And I will say that business analytics is probably one of the top 2 most sought after programs that we have for obvious reasons. So I think it's something that if you are interested in applying, you definitely want to get an application in pretty much as soon as we open, because we do admissions on a rolling basis. So a first come, first served, rather than waiting to sort of May and then giving everyone offers or rejections. So it's a first come, first served basis. So get your application in early from the 1st of October.
Thanks, Richard. So Michael, is it being offered part-time? How many years and what time classes and study is expected per week?
Right, so the part-time option is, as I mentioned, exactly the same courses in this with the same people, but done at half the rate. So 2 modules per trimester instead of 4, which means that there are some lectures during office hours. So if you're thinking of doing the part-time program, I would say for that reason, but also, you know, so for logistical reasons, you would want the support of your employer to facilitate times that you need to be in lectures. But actually, the other thing that I think is really, really important is you should have the support of your employer anyway, because a lot of project work will tie in with your work, and it's a demanding program. So, you know, if you have an employer who expects you to work very long hours and doesn't care about you doing a master's, I would address that up front and say to the employer, look, you know, this is a very worthwhile program, but it's a big commitment. So, and we have, you know, part-time students do very well. They benefit greatly from the program, again, because so much of what they're learning ties into their work. And so they're able, for the capstone, for instance, we would encourage people who are taking the program part-time to base the capstone on a project in their company. And that, you know, that actually really helps their employer to recognize the benefit of taking the program. So I would just, so on, in terms of logistics, you would need time during working hours to attend lectures at certain times. So I would urge you to have the support of your employer in doing that. And again, the reality is that you shouldn't really embark on this program without thinking that it would impact on your capacity to do a full-time job, because it will. It is a demanding program. I see a question from Swati. Are there
Swati, yeah.
industrial projects or internships in the course? Yeah, the capstone covers that type of engagement. We don't have any other options for internships, for instance, outside the capstone. The reason being that the curriculum is very busy. So only in the summer term of the MSc, you take the capstone, but you're also taking 2 other taught courses at the same time. So but the capstone projects can and do involve very close engagement with companies.
And another question there, is it recommended to have work experience before applying? And this
It's not certainly not
science
required.
undergrad.
Thank you. Thanks, Marie. It's certainly not required. It's obviously beneficial. What I see happening in the class, though, is it's actually the mixture of people that makes it interesting. So it's not as if the people with work experience benefit more from the program necessarily at the expense of people who don't have experience. It's when you put those together that, and again, Vamsi, you had relevant work experience coming into the program. So when you were doing group work, you could think about, oh, here's, this something relates to something I did in the job before.
Yeah, so I can just add one point over here. So like as Michael said, we work in different groups and of different group sizes, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, and sometimes 5 as well. So what I've noticed across different groups and with random people is that people with experience, they generally tend to have a bias towards the way that we are going to think about things, like proceed with the project. But it's actually the people without experience who come up with new ideas, because you guys are able to think outside the box and just think everything and anything. It's just that we are limited. For example, I know for a fact that I get limited due to the experience that I have, but I really appreciate the value that the freshers bring to the groups, because it's a complete new mindset and it's not corrupted, I would say. So that's something that is really good. So you'll actually have much more experience in this course rather than the experienced people, I would say.
Well, that's interesting, Vamsi. So yeah, I think it's very beneficial just to have a variety of people
exactly
in the program.
Okay, and so what is the average class size and acceptance rate for the program?
Yeah, Vamsi, cover your ears. We've had a growing class size in recent years, which is fantastic, but we are always concerned to make sure that the student experiences the best that it can be. And the reason I'm saying Vamsi, cover your ears is because the class size has grown significantly in recent years. And so we're obviously getting feedback that, yes, it's a great program, but sometimes we wish the class size wasn't so big, because it's difficult to engage with the lecturers and get to know the lecturers. And our intention for the coming year actually is to have a double delivery, which means that we would, I think, depending on how, it's a little bit like booking flights. We don't know exactly what the number will be when we start in September, but I think we're probably going to have 2 parallel groups of 50 to 60 students. So a total class size. Its class size this year is 115, which is very big for a master's program. We expect it to be a similar size in the coming year, but with a double delivery of many of the lecture sessions. Sorry, Vamsi, I wish we could have done that this year, but it's a question of capacity.
But still, it was fun. It is.
Oh, thank you.
Good. Yes.
Yeah, and even though we sometimes have large groups for lectures, the group work, I think, remains valuable. So, even if we're in a class of 100 or more, there is a lot of activity within groups. And something that I found interesting, now I don't know about everybody else, but I would not wish for another year of remote working and study, because it's demanding in some ways. But actually the lectures online with a large class size in a strange way have actually worked really well. So people, even it sounds like if you have 100 people in a lecture, it's very, very difficult for people to engage. But I found actually people have engaged really well online. Whereas in the classroom, sometimes it's the people, in a large room with 100 people, sometimes it's the people at the front of the room who get into a habit of engaging, and the people at the back of the room sort of self-select and tend to engage less. So I've seen in the remote environment that actually everybody has actually been quite willing to engage, which has worked very well.
So Vamsi, maybe you could answer this question. So what programming coding languages are taught on the program?
Yeah, so in the first trimester, you would definitely have Python. So that's like the major subject that we'll be learning. So that's a whole module, a core module for us. And then you'll be learning about Tableau in the second one, and then SAS in particular, because we'll be doing a lot of data mining assignments with that. So SAS is just the platform that we are going to use to learn SQL. So you'll be covering SQL as well in the second trimester. So along with programming languages, you have visualization tools and business intelligence tools. So you will be working a lot on Excel and Tableau as well. So there's a really, really interesting assignment that we did for Tableau, which was like amazing. And the third trimester, we'll be working literally on R, but the idea behind that is to build a lot of predictive models and understand like the depth of the predictive model. So that's the assignment that we are currently going through. So it's quite interesting. And like the third semester module, statistics. So it's better you start off with statistics a bit, have a brief understanding of what is covered in that. But yeah, I think these three languages will be really important. And again, we work a lot on Excel, so let's not underestimate Excel over here.
Thanks, Vamsi. So next question, what are the different career opportunities available and which regions are students usually placed after completing the program?
Yeah, so the career options, as I mentioned earlier, as it happens, we have a very strong cluster of multinational corporations in Ireland, and there's a long discussion about tax advantages and so on. It's not really that. So Microsoft now has been in Ireland for, Microsoft's been in Ireland for well over 30 years. Apple has been in Ireland for 40 years, I believe, even though we think of these as very new companies. So I would say that, there's a very strong trend of people going to work in multinationals, but also local companies. So we've quite a lot of technology companies and then a range of different sectors. So, finance, various aspects of finance, but also the food industry is quite big in Ireland as well. And in general, pretty much every company, and we've mentioned examples in HR and marketing, so there's a need for analytics graduates. So it's not like you're not going into the business analytics industry, there isn't one. You're going into business analytics roles within a very wide variety of companies. So Microsoft, as I mentioned, would be a large employer. The largest single recruiter of graduates from our program. Remember, you might know something about this as well. Quite a lot go into Accenture, so consulting firms, but
yeah, kind of the big ones.
Yeah, so the big consulting firms and technology companies. And sorry, Anne-Marie, the second part of the question was about regions.
Yeah.
Does that mean?
So it just says which regions are students usually placed after completing the program?
Okay, so I'm not sure, does that mean geographic regions? Because if so,
sure.
Quite a lot of them, particularly international students, the vast majority of them tend to stay around Dublin after graduating. And sorry, whoever was asking that question, I'm not sure if that's what you were, or if you're talking about geographic regions or industry sectors.
Okay, so next question is a student who is 22 and has part-time internship experience and is wondering what type of technical skills should they learn to work and compete with classmates who have more experience.
Okay, so I would like to just add one thing. So rather than looking at it as a way like competing with classmates, so for us, it's been about learning with classmates. So we have learned a lot of things from each other in the course, working with different groups. So there was definitely no competition among the classmates, I would say. So, so the skills that like the tools and technologies that I mentioned before, if you can just focus on them, like I wouldn't say deep dive into it completely, but just get a hang of it. So you'll be like at a good stage and you can work with your teammates comfortably. So
thank you. That's a great answer, Vamsi. Thank you. I don't think about students competing with each other.
Yes.
I really honestly don't. But I think Generally, people perform well. So in terms of, outcomes and learning outcomes and performance and assessment and so on, I mean, people perform pretty strongly in this program. Something that I would be really proud of actually is that, and I should thank my colleagues here, particularly Anne-Marie and also the class ambassadors. We actually have very few students who do badly in the program. It's really unusual. And I think group work is a factor there as well.
So Michael, we need to finish up now, unfortunately. So there's another webinar starting, so we need to just finish up.
Well, so, sorry, Anne-Marie, just very quickly,
yeah.
I've been answering a lot of questions there just on the Q&A. Obviously, there's still some there in the chat box. So generally, it's ourselves in admissions that you might direct a lot of these questions to. So our email in admissions is smurfit.admissions@ucd.ie. So for anyone maybe who hasn't had their questions answered, please drop us an email. We'll be able to get back to you. I think it's been quite a good amount of questions coming in today, so there's never enough time in these things, but there are also other offline content that is available online as well that you'll see and you'll get an email to once this event is finished for the day. That's why I just want to say that briefly.
Thanks, Richard. And yeah, thank you very much. I would just echo that the admissions team have a very well managed process, and Anne-Marie and I cannot help you with admissions, with the kind of operational aspects of admissions, and particularly questions about eligibility for the program and admissions criteria and so on. Richard and his team are the people to deal with those. So.
And if you guys want to know more about the student life, how it is like from a student's perspective, you can just reach out to me on LinkedIn and the other class ambassadors as well. So we are always ready to help. So let it be our batch or the next batch. So you can actually do that. Thank you, Vamsi.
Thanks, Vamsi.
Thank you, everybody. I hope we've helped to address some of your questions today, and it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, everyone.